Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Marty McDonald, who is the CEO of Bad Rhino. Marty, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you having me on.
You're welcome, and let's just jump right into your business, and what you do to make an impact into the business world around you. So give us a little bit of a background of Bad Rhino and what brought you to start your social media digital marketing agency.
Absolutely. So first off, again, thanks, Mike, for having me on. And Bad Rhino is a digital agency that focuses primarily, first and foremost, on social media. So what does that mean? We lead with social media. That's our main focus as an agency. But as we've grown over the past 6 years, we had to incorporate a lot of other things that make us essentially a full-service digital agency. So we started back August of 2010 is when the idea was hatched. And we put together a client offering and what we were going to do, my partner and I. And my partner had a couple of different ideas. And I said, you know what? I think these are going to work. I think they're very good. They're very sound, but we had to test them. So there's always that murky point where you're looking over the edge of the abyss and you take that first step going, wonder if anybody needs an agency that focuses on social media. We were lucky enough to land our first few clients very early on. We formalized everything early on in 2011, and we've been off to the races ever since. It's been exciting. To grow a business, to learn new things, to continually grow. And as you know, social media and marketing, when you tie those two together, it's a fast-paced, ever-changing environment. So we keep our clients up to date. We are a full-service agency, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned, and we keep everything, unique to that client. And that's very important for us. We don't use cookie-cutter approaches. Every client gets something that is tailored toward them. Even if they're in a similar type industry, we don't take one thing and drop it into another client's plate. So that's just a little bit about us. Our clients include everything from things in craft beer, small business, golf clients. We've had Major League Baseball players, and a whole host of other clients that we can get into and chat about today, Mike.
Yeah, I love how you specialize, and a lot of people in the business world would say, you need to specialize in, just golf. Don't take on anything else. Just only do golf and do it really, really good. But you say that you specialize in social media and do that really, really good. And then at that point, it doesn't matter the industry because in one sense, it really keeps you guys as an agency fresh and not getting bored with here's another golf company or here's another whatever company. So I love that specificity. And what I would say is probably one of the first things that you need to do after kind of looking at some research and competitors and whatnot is finding that brand's voice. Because if you're an accounting agency, maybe you're going to have a social media voice that's a little bit different than, the craft beer client that you have. So can you speak to when you bring that in and what that looks like?
Yeah, so we do that right out of the gate. And it's, I'm just say two things. One, that well thought out about, not focusing on one type of industry, et cetera. I wish we were thinking that way, and how we had a broad scope of clients is that we were referred into another client. It's really hard to say no to a referral when your current client's already writing you a check and they pull in their buddy, their friend, their colleague and say, you need to look at these guys because they're doing a great job for us. So it's really hard to turn that down, but when you do look at the landscape of it and how you kind of make things move forward and pulling those unique voices for that client out, you have to start right from the get-go. And in fact, many times, there's a longer conversation up front where if they're already ready to sign a contract and they're ready to go, and we spend a little bit more time with them to help them understand how we work, what we're going to do for them, and what we're going to need from them. And sometimes it goes a little bit longer. Even yesterday, we just brought on 2 new clients, And we spent a heck of a lot more time before they even signed. And they were very appreciative of that because we were learning a little bit more about them. And that's twofold. The first one is to make sure we understand what we're walking into. But more importantly, we want them to understand that this is something that they need to have a little bit of a hand in. We'll take care of the bulk of the work, obviously. That's why they're hiring us. But we need to know what other things work for them in their marketing, whether it's print. Maybe they've done a television ad. Maybe they haven't done any marketing in years and they're just on referral basis. We need to understand that so that we know how they communicate with their current clients and their customers and their audience so that we can replicate it and make it better and make it work for them.
Yeah, so in that case, it goes beyond the done for you, and it's kind of like done with you in that sense. Now, once you get the strategy laid down, then you guys are off to the races, and you're not, sending the clients tasks and homework to do. It's because at that point they can say, "I'll bring in an intern myself." But it kind of gets them engaged in the process up front, so that they feel like they're part of that direction. And then as they see things going through their social channels from what you guys are implementing, then it just kind of really resonates with, yep, that's what we talked about. I think it kind of is the opposite of ready, fire, aim. It's like ready, aim, aim, then fire.
Yep, and there's a little bit of the other side of it once they kind of come on board, where we then have free reign because we're both on the same page, and it makes it run a heck of a lot smoother.
Yeah, and even from another standpoint, too, of a potential slight misunderstanding here or there, like anything would have in any business, because you're spending that much time up front getting to know each other on the personal and professional level and strategy level, they're gonna see something that where they might have come back to an agency and said, we've got a problem with this. Well, now they're going to go, ooh, I understand what you're doing with this, but let's tweak this way. And I think that kind of that onboarding process is so critical in that respect. So here's a question on finding that brand voice. Have you ever had a situation or a case or a client or a project where, you've seen something from your outside looking in, perspective where it's like, this is obvious, we need to go in this direction, and the client just really wanted to have their strategy, their focus in another direction, and you just knew it needed to be a little bit, the needle a little bit on your side. What did you do to break through so that they realized that themselves? Because there's no way that you can pound that square peg in a round hole and make them do it, because then they'll resist. So they've got to come to that realization themselves.
Yes, and that's always a challenge. We rely heavily on analytics, so we don't guess very often. I mean, there's some of that when you're getting creative and say, oh, I think this is going to work, or I really enjoy this part, or the client will say the same thing. But when you get into that situation, when we first started out, we would always acquiesce to the client. As we got more and more under our belt, we've we've actually worked with them and said, all right, look, we understand what you're coming from. We can respect that, and we understand that. You brought us on to do a job, so we have to be making, our ultimate goal is to make sure it succeed, and we're not, guessing at this. We're using things that we know in the marketplace, things that have worked for us in the past, and things that have worked for you. So let's do this. Let's take your idea, and we're going to take our idea, and we're going to test them against each other, and work that way. And you know what? There's been some times, Mike, where our idea has crushed our client's idea. There's been other times where they've been pretty even, and there's been a few times where our client's idea came off very, very well. And we try and do that as a partnership. It's not like, hey, it's our way or the highway. Like I said earlier, we don't want to spend all that time learning about them and then ignoring them when they bring up a really... So, we have to make sure that we are working together. But we also have to make sure that they're not misguided. Because sometimes they hear things or they see something and they fall into the shiny object syndrome, and they want to do something that isn't right for their business. And you have to hold your ground as the experts in the field to make sure that they don't waste money. And we've had times where they were like, nope, we're going to try this. We don't really care what you say. And you have to then say, all right, if you guys are really going to say that, but I have to tell you, I don't think it's going to work, and here's why, and I just want to tell you. But if you want to do that, then we will make that happen for you. But you need to know that this is our opinion. And we've had that, and those get bumpy conversations.
Yeah.
Good
but
clients
then you show
come
them
back.
the analytics or the response or the engagement later, and maybe they come around. And I think that kind of is such a revelation kind of a concept, because anyone can feel or think or assume that something's going to work one way or the other because they know their industry. But in reality, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what someone thinks, because at the end of the day, unless something's happening, sales are made, appointments are scheduled, posts are liked or retweeted or commented on in a good way, those are the metrics. Those are kind of like the pre-metrics that lead to the true metrics we're looking for. Because you need to have a like and a comment and a share before maybe a call is scheduled to engage with your brand a little bit more. So that kind of leads me into another question, which is, how do you integrate, or how would you recommend integrating social media marketing into the customer journey?
Absolutely. When we first started out, we were knocking on a lot of doors, and it was, met with a little bit resistance. Now we have more people knocking on our door because people want it in some way, shape, or form. So how do you implement it? That's a great question. Where do you start out? I get that question all the time. What do I need to do? I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do sometimes. And the best part is you have to first know where your audience is. That's the first thing. You want to understand who your audience is and where they are. And that could be based off of current client data, whatever. And then understand the demographics are different for some of these channels, and start with the one that makes most sense. So many times when we have a client or potential client come to us, they're spreading themselves too thin. They didn't become an expert in, say, Facebook before they then moved to Twitter. They're trying to do all the things all at once, and they're not getting any results because they're spread too thin, and they're posting things where their audience isn't hanging out at. So understand where your audience is first. Pick the channel that matches that the best, and be consistent. Those are the first 3 rules that we try and always educate potential clients on.
Yeah, it really does make a lot of sense. I've heard it said years ago that, Twitter's like shorts and flip-flops, and Facebook's like business casual, open collar, no tie, and then LinkedIn is the tuxedo kind of a target audience. So who is your target audience? Is your craft beer audience going to be mostly on LinkedIn? We don't know, because let's look at the metrics and the analytics. So that's a huge, huge point. Do you ever find yourself recommending or looking at putting together a social media campaign that confirms a step in the sales process? Like, for instance, everyone would love to go, hey, social media campaign, click with the credit card processor, and here comes the sale right from social media, but that most of the time is not the case. So is there a way to integrate a social media campaign into one step of the sales journey, such as, maybe talking about a case study that confirms that just connecting with the client for that, free conference or conference call or webinar was a really good decision because I learned a lot. It didn't say I bought and I loved the product or service. It just confirmed one step of the process, so that as their prospects are coming through and looking at different things on their website, maybe they see that tweet preloaded on that page and it makes them want to click to sign up for that webinar or, download that report.
Yes, is the short answer there, Mike. And that's a great thing to talk about. You can verify so many different pieces within social media, and in a relatively cost-effective way. And that part of it makes it exciting, and it should make it exciting for any business owner at any level, and even large corporations, because you can put exactly the way you just described, a step in that process to get an extra call to action in there. And in some cases, most clients don't like to hear this, you're not pushing a sale. What you're pushing is a different action. And if you do that right, it's fairly complex. It's not something you just want to throw in there. You want to track it. You want to change some of the variables in there, and it can get a little cumbersome. But what you just described to me is what the beauty of the internet and internet marketing and social media marketing really can pull out for you. Those data points where even past buyers are doing things as well as future buyers, and you can really start to sort some of that data and really look at, hey, is my message getting across the right way? It can be very powerful.
Yeah, it kind of gets a lot into social proof. And when people see testimonials or reviews or, people talking about a certain brand on social media, that becomes that social proof, and people believe it even if it's not people they know, again, I was just working on some content this past weekend that really validated that exact thing. So every step along the process, you got to sell the click. And you might have to sell the click of downloading that free report or white paper. You have to sell the attending of the webinar. And then you have to sell the schedule a free consultation. There's no strings attached, no selling involved kind of an appointment. All before you sell, now, here's our service or our product and things like that. And I think that's part of what that social media process would do when I'm looking at your website, where it starts with analyzing and then identifying key social channels. Because guess what? Pinterest might not be right for this client, but it might be right for another, or Instagram. So all of those things apply. What are you seeing, just kind of a final question as we wrap up, what are you seeing on the next step in social media, but cautionary of let's not go squirrel or shiny object syndrome, because there's too many people that would go, hey, Instagram's great, let me jump on that. And they try that until the next whatever platform comes up. So what is a trend coming up that we're going to be seeing in social media that we should pay attention to?
Yeah, so, bringing up that whole process that we have right there on the front of our website is perfect. And that's what you really want to analyze. And even going into the question you just asked, that's a great way to start, is let's analyze the market. People jumped on Snapchat like it was, they needed it like air and water. But, a lot of people never really thought about, well, who's consuming this? Who's consuming this content? Who's starting to, create it, number one, but who's also consuming it and who's watching it? So before you jump into anything, just understand where it's going to fit into your marketing currently, what you're currently doing, number one. And then number two, go back to what I said before. Where's your audience? If they're on Snapchat, hey, have at it. Go crazy. Start creating content. Make sure you're tracking it. Make sure you're putting it out consistently. But if they're not there, then don't do it. It's as simple as that. But where the future is and where certain trends are things like Snapchat, things like Instagram, where you have short stories, video combination with, also pictures, short calls to action, things like that. And it's more of a branding exercise, but as they mature, much like a Pinterest, when Pinterest first started, it wasn't some place where you could do sponsored pins and drive a ton of traffic, but as they evolved, they became a great source of traffic and a great source of buyers. And Snapchat and already putting some things in place. It just has to mature. And Instagram is a little bit further along on maturity line, but they're still not quite ready yet. And the last thing I'll end with is what we just talked about, where you're going to test some of those things to get other pieces of call to action, or other pieces out there to get a good call to action. And once you saw people connecting, then you just scale that thing. It's no different than if you're running a print campaign with postcards and you send it out to 100 people and you got 60 responses, and you send it out to 200 and then you got 120, and then you're like, wow, you know what? We have something here, and just scale it out because you're getting that ROI. It's no different than that. You got to track and analyze.
Yeah, because you don't know what works until you track it, and if you assume that you know what works, but you can't back it up with here's why, then you're not doing anybody any good, yourself, your business, your clients, or anything. So I just think that that's the huge takeaway is too many times people just throw things up on the wrong channel and don't watch to see what works and don't analyze and pivot and change, and they just think that we're doing social media, but they might be doing them a disservice. So with that in mind, what's the best way that people can learn more about your agency and engage with you and potentially have you put your system into place in their business?
Sure. So our website is badrhinoinc.com, badrhinoinc.com. All the information's right there. We have a great blog on there that's been out there for quite a few years and is going through some changes right now, but we'll be back up and running. And you can find out everything there. And I give everybody my email address whenever I do a podcast or a radio interview. So that's Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at badrhinoinc.com. And just mention you heard me on this show. I'd be more than happy to talk with you.
Awesome. Well, Marty, thank you so much for your time. It was great getting to know you and your company.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.